Well, a very, very happy Wednesday, and welcome back to the TNC Sports Talk. My name is Justin. Today is April 29th of 2026. How is everyone doing out there? Want to thank everyone for tuning in to us, whether you guys are watching us live on our YouTube page. If you guys are also watching us live on Riverside, want to welcome you guys in. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Let's get down to the conversations. Comment here. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and what sport topic you guys want to cover about. We do primarily cover the Cincinnati sports area, so we'll have some Bengals conversations today, some Reds conversations here in this hour, but we also will cover other sports news and stories as it fits, whatever the conversation lies. So do welcome you guys in. If you guys are watching us on our Facebook page, thank you so much for helping the algorithm there. Just by a simple like and a follow, notifications, and all that fun stuff. Get a part of the conversations. I do post on Facebook so that you guys can comment and to be a part and engage into the conversation. So I look forward to that. Thank you guys so much. Other than that, if you guys are listening to us, if you guys thank you so much for making us your sports talk show here on a Wednesday. Uh, we're just going to dive right into it. Today's program, we do have some football conversations we will kick things off with here. We will also be talking about the Cincinnati Reds. Yet another big victory as they took game one of a three-game series against the Colorado Rockies here. Uh, let me just come on, come on, computer. Like, video doesn't really want to work. But I want to dive into our first conversation of the day. This one was actually dated back a little bit to yesterday. Talking about the grades that I would give the Cincinnati Bengals so far this offseason. Now, I mentioned in yesterday's program that I gave, if you took the Cincinnati Bengals offensive or off-season productivity from March to now, I gave them a solid B, B plus. And the reason why I didn't give them an A on this list is because I didn't feel like they have addressed all the needs quite yet. They have focused a lot on defensive players. They have picked up Boya Mafe. They picked up Jonathan Allen. They made a big improvement. They put it on all their chips, and that's what we want to see as Bengals fans. And even heading into the draft, they addressed a lot of our needs. No questions asked. But we are still missing a few key components that can really just elevate this team, and it prevents the Cincinnati Bengals from being a complete team. And so if you really want me to give the Bengals an A plus, I said, okay, the Bengals need to find some linebackers. They didn't draft them during the draft period, and that was maybe a little bit of a question that the fans had. Sports talks around the city of Cincinnati has also generated. So linebackers are really important now. If the Bengals went on and drafted, picked up anybody else, whether it's a free agent or if it's a trade, I'd focus around linebackers. Excuse me for 1 second. Apparently, pollen is very high right now in our area. And so allergies have really been taking over the household. I have them. I know my kids have them as well. And it kind of is, I'm gonna say, one of the reasons why I sound the way I do. So I do apologize if I try to clear my nasal passage so I can breathe easier, so I could give you a clear voice when I talk. So I do apologize if I take a few moments in this program. Um, but back to the conversation. Like I said, I can't, if they want to get an A, they'd face off with us. But if we focus around the draft and what they picked up in the draft alone, okay? And I have the list right here. They picked up, they focused on some defense. They went about 50-50. They picked up an edge rusher. They picked up a cornerback, which we always need. Then they went over to offense and grabbed a guard, a wide receiver, offensive tackle, and even a tight end before finishing off the draft with a defensive tackle. Now, this is also on top of the idea that prior to the draft, we've been focusing primarily around our defensive line. So priority now shows me saying, look, if the Bengals need to do anything else, it needs to be at the linebacker position. If they need to do anything else, it other than linebackers, is you could always add a cornerback to depth. But sources have now graded the Cincinnati Bengals and given them grades for the draft outcome. So if we lingered and nitpick now down to the NFL draft, what grade level do you give the Cincinnati Bengals? See, I was looking overall in the offseason. So let's narrow down the reality of it is at the focus point that the Bengals needed to make primarily heading into this past draft last week was defensive players. And don't get me wrong, you could always use depth in the receiver position. You could always use depth in the offensive lineman position. So picking up a guard, picking up a receiver, and picking up an offensive line, I didn't necessarily think it was a bad idea. The tight end, Jack injuries out of Texas, that's where I would start questioning the motives and where does the Bengals need help at. But we picked up 2 defensive linemen. We picked up a cornerback. And as a defensive perspective, and let's remember, let's throw in Dexter Lawrence, who we traded for. So technically, we actually picked up 4 players in this draft, according to our defense. 3 of them at which is in the line. And oh, by the way, let me throw out the news that I saw that it looks like the Giants are going to be trying to sign defensive lineman DJ Reader, according to Cincinnati's Inquirer, Dave Clark. So I would give the Bengals, knowing that we had to focus in on defensive players, focus in on linebackers and cornerback. We've only picked up 1 cornerback in Davis out of Washington, and that's fine and all, but where's the depth that we're providing here? Where is now, this, the challenge there? Honestly have to give the Bengals a B minus. You picked up some players, but you didn't address and tackle on needs. Now, I don't know the draft any much so as the next person to make, there's a lot of people out there that know who was available and who wasn't available. So I don't want to sit here and try to make a claim that there was somebody available. Maybe the Bengals looked at the linebackers, looked at all the cornerbacks available in their draft selections, and maybe realized, look, there's just nobody that we could trust, nobody that we could go with. That's why they didn't make the selection. According to Cincinnati draft grade by Sports News, they give the Bengals an A. Howard Davis upgrade the pass defense plenty with high energy. And that's positive feedback. And I love positive feedbacks. Okay, we're taking strides into the Bengals heading into this season. The things that they're doing right now are moves that kind of tickle our funny bone, give us the best sense of guidance and some sort of reality that, hey, the Bengals, Duke Tobin and Mike Brown and even Zach Taylor are eager to get to the postseason and win themselves a championship. So the effort is clearly being made, and according to Sports News, they give them an A. Sharp Football Analyst gives the Bengals a B plus. Davis is the only considered a risk because he's 6'4". Defensive backs often don't pan out, but he's a ball hawk. And the value is reasonable in the late third round. Okay, I like that, right? What was available, what wasn't. A to Z Sports also gives the Bengals a B plus. Former St. Xavier lineman Brian Parker II out of Duke is the highest at an A plus grade. They gave, according to A through Z Sports, Cassius Howell was given a A minus. You had Davis given a B minus. Carter Lou gave A minus, a B plus to Colby Young, a B plus to Brian Parker. If it's just one of Davis or Young's hit and became meaningful contributors, this class will potentially be one of the best Cincinnati has had in a decade. DraftKings has given the Bengals a B plus, bandwagon after the NFL draft. They also, just while we're on the notation, they give the Ravens a B plus, the Steelers a C plus, and the Browns an A minus. NFL.com gives the Bengals a B, splits by the following: day one's a B, day two's an A, and day three's a C, and that's relations to trading their 10th overall pick. Lou is coming off of an ACL injury, which is why he is still available in the fourth round, but I expect him to get starting at center by 2027. Young's a big receiver who should compete for a playing time in 2026. Parker, after Lou, seems to be a bit duplicative, although the Bengals apparently view Parker as someone who can play outside in addition to the interior post. ESPN Mel Keeper says a B for the Bengals draft. It was a C a year ago in comparison, but with Lawrence and their drafts, he moved it up to a B. College Football Network was not necessarily impressed, as it gives the Bengals a C for this draft. Says Brian Parker the second out of Duke is the best value. Um, so the concept here is that I think that we're given a pretty fair grade when it comes to the NFL draft and our selections. And I'm liking that. I'm enjoying the fact that other outside sources that are reporting back on the Bengals are not tarnishing what the Bengals efforts have made in the draft pick. I could be blinded sitting in Cincinnati telling myself, we need X, Y, and Z. And the fact that we got X, Y, and Z is good enough to a win in this year's draft. But in reality, when outside sources, when NFL sports, when, you know, other inquirers, ESPN, that has to deal with the overall concept of the draft is giving the Bengals their flowers. Look at, DraftKings, for example. Out of the draft, there was only 5 A's or 6 A's out of all of them. There was and the Browns and the Panthers were the only A pluses. The Colts and the Giants were solid A's, and the Commanders and the Jets were A minuses. And now you get into the B's, and according to the draft picks, right? Yeah, you have the Bengals, the Ravens, the Buccaneers, the Eagles and the Dolphins all a B plus. So, we're categorized quite fair. Matter of fact, the only team that was really received a D grader or less was the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we made contribution moves in order to make progress into our offensive needs. Now, we still need a few more uh, players that I think, we mentioned yesterday a reconstruction of Joe Burrow's contract can open, but it only benefits the Bengals and it only benefits Joe Burrow to consider the reconstruction of his contract if the Bengals continue that progress. So if I'm Joe Burrow and I'm going to reconstruct that and give back the Bengals $20 million so that they could add a few more players, it needs to be a useful decision, whether it's picking up a linebacker or a cornerback or adding another lineman to the mix. And we could throw out names all we want, but it has to be beneficial to this organization. So I'm interested. Overall, it's a B plus. As the NFL draft, I'm giving it a B minus, to be honest. I think that their focus should have been more primarily around defense and not the offensive players. I think that, yeah, Young is a great aspect. I like Connor Liu with Auburn out there as a guard, and you can never go wrong with what you got. I did question a little bit with the tight end, but the defensive lineman, maybe, Robinson could have been swapped out for a quarterback. But like I said, I don't know these players as well, so I don't know what comes up at the second pick of the round number 7 for the Bengals, and if there's a lineman, cornerback ready. So, what are our next moves is the big question, but I give them a B minus overall. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think the Bengals did at just a great level among the NFL draft as well. Um, this also Now we want to shift our attention to post draft questions. And this was an article on ESPN's website that I wanted to touch base with. So each team made has really benefited from the draft. And we just saw, some a lot of praises to the Browns. They got an A minus according to DraftKings. The Ravens got a B plus with the Bengals, and the Steelers found themselves with a C. How do you guys feel about that? Where do you grade the AFC North draft picks out of the 2026 season? Okay, do you agree with that? And my next thing, and I feel like when I talk about the Steelers, not the Pirates, the Steelers, one of the biggest reasons why they're given a C is because they are still dealing with the quarterback sensation. They don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the future quarterback of their organization, and you can't really make a direction of what's next for the program without a quarterback in Rome. And if Aaron Rodgers decides, "Hey, I'm not coming back to Pittsburgh," what are you going to do from there? And so it's great that we sign a lot of these players, but now it's about, hey, let's execute. So ESPN has post draft questions for all 32 teams. I really want to focus on the AFC North. I want to start with the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, the Baltimore Ravens, let me just remind you for a second. They drafted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players. They had 2 in the 4th, 2 in the 5th, 2 or 3 in the 5th, and 2 in the 7th. They were very productive from offensive line to they stacked up. They stacked up offensively as if because they are a defensive organization. According to ESPN's article here, the Baltimore Ravens question is who will be the Ravens starting center? So their primary focus is going to be the offensive line that is set to protect Lamar Jackson, set to protect the running back. I believe that's Derrick Henry still, and allow them to make plays. And you have a quarterback in Lamar Jackson who could still move and get out of pocket, which is a great advantage in this division in all of football, a matter of fact. But if you don't have a good offensive line, which is the number one question to any organization, then your quarterback cannot move. So it says here, Ravens made the 11th pick. Okay, they got the guard in Ione from Penn State. Um, 11 picks in the draft, but were unable to fill in the biggest need, which was a center. They picked up a guard. They picked up two guards, a matter of fact, and that was it to the offensive line. Okay, so it's been almost 2 months since losing Pro Bowl center Tyler Linderbaum in free agency. Baltimore still has a hole in the middle of the offensive line. Maybe the transition of one of them moves over, but general manager Eric DeCosta said that two prospects he liked to surprisingly taken in the second round, and he didn't believe the other available center prospect would make the immediate impact. He said, and I quote, as a Hall of Famer, general manager Ozzie Newsman once said, "You don't play games in September." And I think we'll have to have a great offensive line in that point. So apparently, according to Jamison Hensley, they have DaCosta said, according to DaCosta, the general manager of the Eric of the Baltimore Ravens, and this is an article written by Jameis Hensley here. The Ravens are not worried about their center. They have time. They're probably either going to transition someone over to center, or they will go on and make a uh, a deal and try to pick up somebody the free agency or via trade. But that's going to be a quick. It's the importance about a center. I played center in high school, and I didn't learn the importance of the amount of control and the amount of responsibility you have as a center until you become a center. Not only you have to have a good relationship with your quarterback. Okay, you got to have a good relationship with your lineman. You got to be able to communicate to your lineman when you're up there. You're calling audibles. You're making adjustments at the line within seconds of seeing what the defense put out there. You also have to you have the responsibility to make sure the ball gets to your quarterback. On top of that, you have to be able to block. And that center, when you got two linemen on top of you in the A gaps, those are very important times where you have to excel at your craft. So, the Ravens aren't worried about that, but that would be a question heading into summer camp. It'll be a question heading into preseason. How are they going to address the offensive line? Now, this one for the Cincinnati Bengals was written by Ben Baby. The question he had it was, are the Bengals going to get a linebacker? Okay, still major additions in the middle of the defense. Assistant GM Steven, can't see his last, Steve, said that the way free agent and the board fell despite having linebackers in queued up, but it's a sign that Bengals believe Demetrius Knight Jr. and Barrett Carter will continue to improve, especially after Cincinnati defensive tackles, Dexter Lawrence or Jonathan Allen has been added to this offseason. So basically, the answer is given right here. Yes, there is still options to go out there and pick up a linebacker or two, which is definitely needed. I think a veteran linebacker would do us some good. But if we have to settle today just playing with what we have in Knight in Carter, do we have enough veterans and developed talent or surrounding them that can help protect and block? And with Dexter Lawrence and Jonathan Allen, uh, they believe they do, but it's still a question. I say if that's the case, a couple more cornerbacks as well would definitely help this organization. Like to then jump to the Browns. Their biggest question. They made a big splash in the draft. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 draft picks. Three of them coming from the fifth round. Two of them in the first. Two of them in the second as well. But their question is how quickly can rookies on offense make an impact? This is a heavily stacked offensive power. We know how good their defense is, but we're heavily stacked in their offense. Spencer Fano, we have Concepicon as well, and along with Jerry Judy in week one, a second round pick, Denzel Boston from Washington as a receiver as well. We are going, this team has been now officially established as a young rookie team. Now, is all of them, I don't know if all of them are going to be able to make rookie sensational improvements and be this team that is a miracle base. But, when you add all these people, you're kind of banking that one prevails and one will be a spotlight of your organization. So their question is how quick their young rookie offense from what they've drafted and who they have thus far is going to be an impact to the season. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, did the Steelers do enough to immediately address their biggest holes? I feel like you can't begin addressing your issues without addressing your quarterback spot. They started off with Max from Arizona State, offensive tackle, which if Aaron Rodgers is to come back, despite that, offensive line is crucial. They picked up Max in the first round. They picked up guard out of Iowa, Jennings Dinker in the third round. They picked up, and that was pretty much it. So is that enough to help the offensive line protecting whoever is at quarterback? Steelers team to target developmental prospects with high upside, but also plenty of unknown. The same can be said for the third round Drew Aller, third round quarterback Dalen Everett, and the sixth round defensive lineman Gabriel Rubio. The Steelers might be able to afford having multiple developmental quarterbacks within the hope of Aaron Rodgers' return, but the tackle position could need a plug-and-play contributor if Broderick Jones isn't ready to going following neck surgery. So I look at the Steelers draft picks, and I think that you picked up a quarterback in Drew Aller. At some point, we have to make that decision of, hey, let's move on. If we have to be prepared to move on if Aaron Rodgers is not available. But the indication is the offensive line. The biggest issue that they have defense to save the day. But is their offensive line capable of being brought up? So those are the questions coming off of ESPN. They have all 32 teams. So if you're a fan with a different team, you can look at this article and read about what they say about your particular team. But for the Ravens, it's the starting center. For the Bengals, it's the defense and linebackers. For the Browns, it's the rookies. And for the Steelers, it's the biggest holes. And so when I look at this overall AFC North, offensive line is a big concern coming out of Baltimore, coming out of Pittsburgh. Okay. Those have to be number one address points. I think their defense is fine. I think that they have a good established offense overall. But if they don't have an offensive line, then they don't have nothing. Okay. The Browns have to focus themselves around the rookie, rookie progress. As a majority of their team this year is, especially offensively, is going to be all rookies. We're not nobody in the NFL has seen them before at the pro level. No one, they are all getting taste for this for the very first time. And therefore, it's important for rookies to make an impact. And if you could snag one, two, maybe 3 out of all those guys, and they could become a future star for the Browns, and it is a win. And then for the Bengals here, they believe, and we got to agree, linebackers is good enough. I don't want to just feel comfortable relying on Dexter Lawrence and Jonathan Allen to help protect our secondary. Dexter Knight, Garrett Carter. I think they need a veteran in there that can help guide them as well. Yes, they're looking to improve, and I expect them to improve a lot, but they have to also make uh, a little bit of support will do nicely for them. So, what do you guys think are the big questions following the NFL draft with the AFC North? Now, in correspondence to that, just like we talked about the Cincinnati Reds heading into spring training, the Bengals have some big concerns. Some players are in danger of obtaining a position, and they're in danger from being cut from the 53-man roster. As we have made efforts into approaching this offseason and the additions that we have made, we have now stacked our team to the point where now we have to reevaluate everyone and determine who best fits for the 53-man roster. And I look at this as a good problem to have. And it should be a good problem to have. It will create competitive balance in summer camp, competitive balance in preseason, and everyone's going to have to fight for their position in the NFL for the Cincinnati Bengals roster. Offensively, this is according to Cincy's Jungle article written this morning by Jason Garrison. So let's compare and contrast. Offensively, they have Mitchell Tinsley, who could be in danger. He emerged in 2025 and was a fun story. Racked with injuries, he wowed his fans with acrobatic catches, including 2 touchdowns. It looked like would emerge as another consistent weapon for Joe Burrow as he adds on to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It would be great to add a comfortable wide receiver number 3, considering that we departed from Jermaine Burton. Yeah, the competition right now is established with Charlie Jones and Andrea Osivas, if I'm saying that correctly, which could lead with all the injuries, which could honestly lead for him to be cut. Eric All Jr. is mentioned here. All has a ton of talent. He had injury concerns heading into the 2024 draft. It was tough, which is why he fell in the 4th round. He went on the IR about halfway through his rookie year and then missed his sophomore year after he had an additional surgery. The tight end from Texas Tech, Jack Injuries, falls into the Bengals 7th round, and it could be a competition between them two, especially if all can't be persistent and stay healthy. Tanner Hudson, and maybe all is healthy. Maybe he is showing some signs of resurgent as he gets past the first 2 years of his career. Then Tanner Hudson makes himself a well-known target. I mean, you just signed Jack Andres, and that will be a challenge for the tight end position. You got Mike Gesicki, you got True Sample. There's too much value of blockers as H-back. Could Hudson be the odd man out in the tight end position? Some good battles right there, right? Cody Ford, Renaissance man for the Bengals offensive line. When it comes to being a backup, he plays almost every position other than center. That's been one of the most alluring attributes. Some depth as the offensive line throughout the year. But with the addition of Connor Lew and Brian Parker, who else is very versatile? Ford could be looking for work elsewhere, especially if the Bengals make another addition to the line. I feel like the offensive line is stacked right now. Like I said, most important thing is staying healthy, providing that depth. I like that. Jalen Rivers is also mentioned for the offense position. Because of Ford's versatility, cutting him is a reach. Cutting Rivers isn't. He'll be fighting for a position immediately. And so offensively, there are some great conversations and some great attributes in some great problems, offensive line and the receivers and in the tight end position. Now let's move over to the defense. TJ Slayton was a free agent acquisition from the defense last offseason. He wouldn't be on this list if it wasn't for the trade of Dexter Lawrence. Lawrence is not the only starting nose tackle, but he's face of the defense. Maybe the Bengals keep Slayton in nice rotation, but gave up the number of 10th pick overall for Sexy Dexy. So I honestly believe that when it comes down to the defensive line, we could never have too much talent. I think cross training them if possible, when you play 4-3, or I kind of like to figure 4 or 5 men on that line providing pressure. So I like to try to keep him. But yeah, if you go out there and pick up a Dexter Lawrence and he's the one to show you, uh, he's going to lead this team. You expect him to be out there all the time. There's really not much slim room to next. The more defensive linemen you pick up also tells me that you gotta that you don't trust the guys you have now. So really got to provide some depth. And if you're going to get rid of anybody, you're not just going to get rid of someone you just picked up. McKinley Jackson barely deserves to make this list, but only because more likely than not that he could get cut. Hard times cracking as the active roster in game days in 2025. And now there's so much more talent in Landon Robinson, the Bengals' seventh round pick this season for Landon, that could be cutting him as well. So he's another guy added on to that defensive line. Chris Jenkins is one of the qualifies more than as a surprise cut. Jenkins was Bengals second round pick of the 2024 draft and hasn't quite lived up to the potential, the mutant nickname. Maybe the Bengals keep as many defensive linemen as possible to build a solid rotation, but you got Jenkins in there, McKinley, you got Lawrence, B.J. Hill, Jonathan Allen, and then others. You got to find room for some. Cedric Johnson, the 2024 draft as well in the sixth round. Off the edge, when he gotten time on the field, there was an awful lot of talent for players on the roster. But now you add in Miles, the potential Miles Murphy in the return if you can, Shamar Stewart, Boya Mafe. So this is going to become, and then now Cassius Howell. So we really got to decide who we are going to have. DJ Ivy selected in the seventh round of the 2023 draft. Hasn't gotten much playing time, shown his potential on the field, as depth as a quarterback position. If the Bengals decide to keep five safeties or go with after a free agent to get a cut, Ivy could find a new home. Josier Taylor, same goes for Taylor as he's brought out as a free agent before the draft, but he's not guaranteed a roster spot if the Bengals decide to add another veteran corner. They could keep Ivy, who's homegrown talent, rather than Taylor. And then the last thing on this list, Anthony. Anthony, a seven-round pick, like Ivy, has gotten a lot of playing time, but the safety position has been such a mess since Jesse Bates has allowed to leave free agency, and Bengals signed Brian Cook this past offseason. And that itself didn't affect Anthony much, but later signing Kyle Duggar. Duggar is likely to compete with Battle for snap opposite of Cook, which means the fourth is likely final safety spot to come down to Anthony or PJ Jules. Jules may even be on this battle list. So there, at the end of the day, the Bengals have some great questions to ask. And the questions are going to linger around how much depth do you want as one position? Do you want to bring in four plus safeties to fit the backfield? Well, if you bring in more than four safeties, you got to eat up some quarterback position. If you want to have 7, 8 guys as your defensive linemen, great. You're going to have to make sure that your secondary and your linebackers are well taken care of. Offensive line, receivers, tight end is a great question. We are to expect some cuts to be made, but where are they going to come from? Focus on who hasn't played well, focused on who hasn't contributed in highlighted areas. I'd keep the ones who contribute, but you also focus on injuries. Focus on the ones who just aren't consistent because we don't need our team to eat up on injuries, especially early part of the season or the back half of the season where this team struggles, to complete the most. So these are great questions to ask if you are a Bengals fan. Our next steps are very important because I feel like we are so close from finishing a successful offseason to at least give our Bengals the great chance of getting back to an AFC championship and getting back to a Super Bowl. But what we decide to do here is better than nothing because I don't think what we're at is enough to get us there. So what do you guys think? Who do you guys think are eligible to be cut? Who should be endangered for keeping their job heading into summer camp and heading into preseason this year? And does that weigh in? Does the Bengals have the Bengals done enough to make an impact of heading into this season, or should they continue making some more progress? Let me know down in the comments. Want to go ahead and transition over to last night's game between the Colorado Rockies and the Cincinnati Reds. Boy, it was fun watching the Reds, and they had a lot of key moments. I tell you that. Leads things off at the bottom of the first inning with Ellie De La Cruz uh, singles on a fly ball out to Troy Johnson and to first base. Dane Myers ends up scoring, and the Reds are out to an early 1-0 lead to start the ball game. Later in the first, Spencer Steer then home hits his fifth home run on the season, um, out to left center field, scoring in Ellie De La Cruz. The Reds then lead 3-0. Um, Eduardo Julian from the Colorado Rockies in the top of the third ends up homering for his second time this year, putting the Rockies on the board 3-1. Ellie De La Cruz then singles on a ground ball to center field, scoring in Dane Myers in the bottom of the inning, extending their lead to 4-1. Top of the sixth inning, we saw, excuse me, the top of the sixth inning, we saw Julian, or top of the fifth inning, excuse me, we saw Julian sat there. He hit a single on a ground ball to center field. Jake McCarthy scores. Trick coming back from a down, making it 4-2. And then in the bottom of the eighth inning, Ellie De La Cruz hits his 10th home run of the season out in left field, scoring in Dame Myers. Nathaniel Lowe singles on a line drive in the eighth inning, scoring in Sal Stewart. And that's all she wrote. And the Reds picked up 7 hits on 11 runs, only recorded one error of the night. That error comes from um, let me see where that error comes from. Chase Burns on a pickoff attempt there. Um, it was a great game. Uh, Ellie De La Cruz went 3 for 4, 4 RBIs. So I was looking at this. Um, they were saying something about his Ellie De La Cruz, looks at had it was something special. And they talked highly of Ellie De La Cruz throughout last night's game. And what I counter was that, look, a lot of people believe that Ellie De La Cruz hasn't even reached, uh, you know, his pivotal moment of the season. There's still a lot more to come, and he's already has stolen 24 bags, or he has 24 RBIs. He has stolen his eighth bag of the season. He had 2 stolen bases, recording his eighth in the second. Uh, and then Myers had a stolen base to it. Um, and so, the good stuff from Ellie De La Cruz has yet to be seen. And from this hardcore of the lineup, even Sal Stewart and Spencer Steer and Noelvi Marte, one of the things that you would be asking yourself this time last year, if one of our top players go down, is how well can we pick up the pace and maintain the stamina? Well, I think that it's been very clear. It was gut wrenching when you heard that Gino Suarez went down with an injury, but to see Nathaniel Lowe step up, he hit a home run in every game on over the last, over the weekend. He's on a 6 game hitting streak that was extended last night. He's filling nicely as a left-handed batter in the lineup, replacing Suarez right now, who's on the IL. Just doesn't seem to phase what's going on offensively for Ellie De La Cruz or Sal Stewart or Dane Myers. And so that's great news that one person who you think highly of heading in, that plays huge contribution, whether he's out on the field at third base or he's as a DH, the fact that he's not in the lineup at the moment and we're not phased by it, I think is a huge, huge note for the organization to take. Chase Burns had another great outing, 6 innings, 7 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts, only allowing not one home run. If you went out to yesterday's ball game, you would discover that the Reds uh, had a total of 12 strikeouts. The 11th one, which is the lucky number 11 for fans who went out in attendance at yesterday's game, you could go to Snappy's Pizza. You submit your ticket, and you could get a free small one-topping pizza. Thanks to Snappy's, because thanks to the Cincinnati Reds, who recorded 11 strikeouts. I tell you, it was because of Stevenson's ABS challenge that overturned a ball into a strike that gave you guys the pizza. Now you guys would have got it anyways, but it was just something a little sweet to talk about. But, also something that we've seen change, in the last week itself, which is a great, adjustment to see made ending the month of April, heading into the month of May, is that the Reds have been able to, uh, accumulate more runs. So the Reds are finding definitely some great success, keeping the ball rolling. It's been fun watching them, and that rolls over heading into today's game at 6:40. Today's game at 6:40 will be available on Reds TV, or you can listen to it at WLW 700. The right-handed pitcher Tomoyuki Surgano will be on the mound. He last pitched back on Wednesday against the Padres, where he pitched 5 2/3 of an inning, giving up 5 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts. He'll be going up against our very own left-handed pitcher Brandon Williamson, who is 2-2 with the 5.4 ERA and 15 strikeouts. But Brandon Williamson last pitched on Wednesday in Tampa Bay. He picked up the loss after going 4 1/3 of an inning, giving up 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 3 walks, and 3 strikeouts. So looking to bounce back here heading into tonight. First pitch is scheduled for 6:40 p.m. One thing we could take away from the Cincinnati Reds victory last night, other than offensive power and also the pitching from Chase Burns, is that they are going to at least finish this homestands with a 3-3 record, regardless of what the outcome is. For the rest of these next 2 games, they'll play tonight. And they'll play the rubber game matchup tomorrow at 12:40. We won't be here to give you that coverage, but I'm excited for that one. The Reds do have a chance to take the series. So it's another win homestands, and that's what I'm looking for. We're about to go on to the road, take on the Pirates, take on the Cubs, and we want to just capitalize on as much success as we can. And the Colorado Rockies is one of those teams that we should find success against, and we did it last night. Looking to do it again tonight, but that will be the tell of the take as we take on the Rockies later on. The Reds are 19-10, still in first place of the NL Central. They now still find themselves a game and a half above the Chicago Cubs, who beat the San Diego Padres last night. We'll get into that in a moment. The St. Louis Cardinals are in third, 3 games back, and the Milwaukee Brewers and Pittsburgh Pirates are 3.5 games back, sitting in last place. Man, what fun times. Hopefully that stays. We got 2 games left to finish off the month of April. That's something that the Reds have not finished off the month of April in first place since the since in nearly 20 years. Something to keep an eye out for. Let's take a look at what's going on in the National League Central. Yesterday, the Cardinals beat the Pirates 11-7 at PNC Park, the area we're going to head to next, coming up for this weekend. The Milwaukee Brewers beat the Arizona Diamondbacks 13-2, and the Chicago Cubs beating the San Diego Padres 8-3. Later on today, the first games are getting ready as the Angels and White Sox about starting to warm up. Scheduled pitch coming up in a few minutes. The Rays and Guardians are on a rain delay, but in the NL Central, the at 4:10, the Chicago Cubs take on the Padres in this rubber game series. The series is split at one apiece. Talion will be on the mound for the Cubs, going up against Waldron for the Padres. The Colorado Rockies and the Reds first pitch at 6:40. At 6:40, the St. Louis Cardinals take on the Pittsburgh Pirates. And at 7:40, the Arizona Diamondbacks take on the Milwaukee Brewers. You can get all your scores, news, and updates at MLB.com. Another article coming out of Major League Baseball is some surprises and disappointments coming out of Major League Baseball earlier on this year. A little report. This article was written by Mark Finsan. A little vote was done about the biggest surprises. Four votes came to the Pirates, as three votes came to the Cincinnati Reds. Three votes made it to the Twins, tying the Reds. Braves had two votes, and one, two, three, four, five, six, seven teams made one vote a surprise. The three Central Division teams led the way, with the Pirates edging out the Reds and Twins by a single vote. Pittsburgh sits. This was done where the Pittsburgh Pirates were sitting 16-13 through the Pirates plus 24 run differential, trail only the Dodgers, Braves, and Cubs in the National League. Additional, Ryan O'Hearn and Brandon Lowe this offseason has had desired effect. The Pirates ranked fifth in the NL with in runs scored. They also mentioned the Reds, who has a great start to the season in the NL Central, despite of their run differential, which is only a -1. Is getting strong pitching, which is the fourth lowest ERA in the National League, even with the absence of Hunter Green. The bullpen is exceeding expectations early on, putting them in a position to win a lot of close games. Uh, so it's great stuff to read. You could continue to read the article. This disappointing teams comes from the Mets, who received 10 votes, the Red Sox, Phillies, Blue Jays, and Mariners. And we've already seen the Red Sox and Phillies part ways with their managers, but the Mets and the Mariners were in conversations of yesterday's segment about other managers who could be on the hot seat early on this season. Something to pay attention to, and it's not really a good conversation to have. A lot of these teams that are listed to be disappointments are expected to be top teams in the Major League Baseball today. So something's going on where they're not really exceeding their performance. Well, the NBA playoffs continue. Yesterday's games, the 76ers won, beating the Celtics 113-97. They have moved to this 2-3 series, still trailing the Celtics. The Knicks beat the Hawks last night with a 126-97 victory. They move out in front to a 3-2 lead against the Hawks. San Antonio Spurs wrap up in defeat, eliminating the Portland Trailblazers after winning 114-95 in yesterday's ball game. Today, the Amazon and ESPN will host three more games at 7 p.m. The tip-off between the Orlando Magic and it takes on the Detroit Pistons in Detroit. Orlando Magic lead the series 3-0. At 7:30 on ESPN, you can watch the Toronto Raptors take on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The series is tied to a piece. And at 10 p.m. on ESPN, the Lakers will host the Houston Rockets. The Lakers are out front 3-1 in the first round. They could win, they will advance. So one thing I'm not a fan of here is the fact that the playoffs, the first round playoffs of the NBA, still deal with a 7 game series. Do anything you can in NBA to stretch out your postseason. I just can't that's a lot of I mean, I get it. It's a lot of basketball, but what about best out of 5 to kick off and then move to 3 to 7? I just think that's crazy, to be honest. Really? I don't know. What do you guys think? How do you think the NBA playoff format, subsides to you? Last but not least, like to follow up our final segment of this hour in our show by giving you 5 rookies who were drafted in the 2026 NFL draft that fits the scene and looks to succeed. Coming in at number 1 is Fernando Mendoza with the Las Vegas Raiders. The match between Mendoza and the new coach Clint Kubiak is one of them made in heaven. Along of all things, Mendoza does the best of our featured aspects of the offense of Kubiak likes to run. Mendoza is dominant, throwing over the middle of the field, which should help him compete all crosses in breaking routes that stem from Kubiak's offense. He went 153 of 184 and 2,142 yards and 24 touchdowns with 3 picks when throwing over the middle of the field last season. Now, I know this is college compared to the NFL, but there's a lot of high expectations with Mendoza. I will want to see more than I'm a biggest fan of wanting to see success come from Mendoza compared to anyone else that's a fan. Okay. So hopefully we can find and with the right scheme, it probably fits well. Archville Reese with the Giants out of Ohio State star went to a team that allows him to play multiple roles, not just as an edge rusher, might have been the case if he had been drafted elsewhere. Reese played on 327 snaps at outside linebacker and 286 snaps at inside linebacker last season. Through his figure overall exaggerates how often he actually lined up on the edge and the defense because he is still off to the ball for plenty of those outside backer snaps. I think this is a great idea for the San Francisco Giants, and it should be a great idea for a lot of other NFL teams to be able to have and find yourself players that can be useful elsewhere other than in the prologue of just playing one position, especially when it comes down to defensive line. If you can play up the middle or even on the edge, I think it benefits the organization. And I hope the Giants can utilize that defensively as they look to make improvements this year. Caleb Downs with the Cowboys. There is just something that fits the name with the team that he's on. Okay, Downs is basically a platonic ideal of what the new Cowboys defensive coordinator, Christian Parker, desires in a defensive back. He's versatile. Versatility allows him to play numerous roles depending on whether the Cowboys are upline on a 3-4 scheme or in a nickel package. Downs played 241 snaps in the box, 240 snaps as a free safety, and 146 snaps as a slot quarterback. Another player that changing the configuration of the dynamic of a player to what a team needs, being versatile to be used around the field helps out tremendously, especially on defense. And when you are able to play from safety to quarterback to linebacker and excel at all 3 positions, no matter what the play is, I think it just brings in a cutting edge. So that's why Caleb Downs and the Dallas Cowboys scheme fits so well. Last but not least on this list, you got Ruben Bain Jr. with the Buccaneers. Slipped in the draft due to the concerns of his short arms, measured at 30 and 7/8 inches of the NFL scouting combine, but he landed in a scheme that will allow him to do what he does best. Okay. Todd Bowles moves players all over the field, defensive front consistently. And with the fact that defenses won't always know where Bain is coming from or which gap he is rushing, will allow him to uh, move in, of the concerns that come with his arm length. I'm not worried about his arm length defensively. It's about how fast can you get to the quarterback. Okay, Bain to rush the inside as well as from the edge, and he did some of his best work with Miami when he rushed up the field against guards. So I think he got, more of a fatigue, smaller insight person, someone who could slip up the middle, and that speed is going to make up for the stretch that he has. And that's why he fits a really good scheme for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If there's anyone on that list that I forgot to mention, please let me know in the comments. But those players fit those schemes with those organizations for those reasons. That is the article on CBSSports.com, and that's what you guys can read. Well, that is all the time I have for you guys today on this episode. I want to thank you so much for tuning in and watching us. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button wherever you guys are watching us from. If it's on YouTube, if it's on Facebook, if you guys are watching a cutting video, please, 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 so much would support and help by watching us and liking, sharing, subscribe, and also having the notifications on. If you guys are downloading us, thank you for making you our sports talk show. Like I said, I won't be here tomorrow. Will be out of town. I will be back on Friday. We'll get you guys ready for sports news and stories. But until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll be back Friday. And until then, you guys take care. All right, have a good one. We'll see you guys Friday. Bye-bye.